DB Dennis Bernstein joining us right now. So let's welcome.
All right.
Let's welcome Dennis, our first Big Apple hockey first timer. He's got to catch up to Pagnota, but glad to have you on, DB. How are you?
Doing great. Happy to join the podcast and talk with you guys. No problem at all.
Awesome. So, as many of our viewers know, you're one of the top King insiders, as long as being on at TFP. So let's just start there. What are your early observations on the Kings' start to the year through their first, 20-odd games?
They're first in offense and first in defense. Todd McClellan's doing a pretty good job, eh?
Right. Exactly.
I think they're second in points percentage. A lot of things are working for this team. Cam Talbot, I think right now through 20 games is their MVP. Came out of nowhere. Injury wreck season last season. Has done great. Is certainly the guy in net right now. Quentin Byfield, who we've been waiting, including me, for a while to emerge, has certainly emerged as an effective, productive top-line player. Last year he was effective, just wasn't putting up points and not getting goals. Again, you go to the depth on at center. When they traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois, that's what they wanted to achieve. And on some nights, to be honest with you, his line's their fourth best line. And you have a player like that who's a 30-30 player, and it's your fourth productive line, you got a pretty darn good team. So what's not to like in Los Angeles right now? They've won 9 straight on the road, and I believe they would break the record, the NHL record, against the Islanders next Saturday night. They have one more road game.
They very well might at this rate.
Yeah, they have one road game in Columbus on Tuesday, and then actually, I don't know. I think they might break it against Montreal.
But yeah, it's been a hell of a ride for the Kings right now. It's been amazing.
Oh yeah. It's well, look, they were going to be good anyway, right? They had 99, 104 point seasons to back. The question with this team, can they win in the playoffs? Because the last 2 seasons, Edmonton knocked them out. Right now, they've played some legitimately good teams. They lost to Boston at home. They lost to Colorado opening night. They lost in a shootout to Vegas, but wound up beating Vegas. So this is a legit team. Look, is Cam Talbot going to be, 200 goals against a 927 save percentage for the rest of the season? Doubtful, but they don't give up much. I think they're first or second with respect to surrounding high danger chances. They play the 1-3-1 effectively. I know there was a Habs fan that watched the game on Saturday. The Kings won 4-0 and said, it looks like a Jacques Lemaire coach team. I'm like, really? They're second in goal differential and first in goals. They're not a Jacques Lemaire team. So everything's clicked very, very well, and they do have a lot of talent. So they're going to be a very dangerous team if they continue to play this way once we get to April, and that's a long way away.
They were saying this on NHL Network, that watching the Habs against them, there was absolutely nothing LA gave them.
Yeah, I used the word smothered. They were smothered by the Kings, the Habs. And look, I saw the Habs in Boston the week before. They're not a very good team. They're a young team. They have talent. Slavkovsky's trying to find his way. They have one legit center in Suzuki. Caulfield's an excellent goal scorer. They have a very young defense. They have some depth in goal. But, yeah, they smothered that team. They didn't really have a sniff. And it was 2-0, but you weren't really feel threatened. And 2-0 is no lead in this league anymore, right? You can score 3 goals in 3 minutes. So, but they were never threatened. So that was the one thing about this team. They play very, very well. They've certainly responded to the tweaks that Todd McClellan and coaching staff has put in the season. Like they had the top penalty kill. They were, what lost them the playoffs last year was the penalty kill. So to see this much of a change, and there wasn't too much change in personnel. They added Trevor Lewis, who has come back on a reunion tour. The guy that left was Rasmus Kopari, who is a decent enough defensive player, but their structure's changed a little bit, and they're getting goaltending. It's as simple as that. The goaltending they weren't getting at the beginning of last season. I know people are skeptical about the Kings. It's like, could this continue? For one season, it can. Like, I don't know how long Cam Talbot's going to play. He's 36, 37 years old. So, but everything's come together for this team very, very well in the early going. But as Todd always reminds me in the media in LA, it's still very early. But, I kind of balance that by saying, what? It's 76% of the teams who are in the playoff spot by Thanksgiving stay in the playoffs. Yeah. This team is legit to win the division. That's how good they are right now, short of no injuries, which they really have been pretty good luck with injuries. They've lost Blake Lizotte presently. He's in a red no-contact jersey. Probably gets a game over the weekend. And the other big missing part would be Victor Arvidsson, who really impacts their power play. The Kings are about 20% on the power play, which nowadays is about, average? I think 20 years ago it would have led the league. So there's been a little small bumps if they stayed injury-free. And everybody's really achieved or overachieved, depending on the individual you're talking about.
Now, DB, at the start, you mentioned Quentin Byfield. I was going to ask you about him. 16 points in 19 games.
Yeah.
He seems like he's really kind of got in his comfort zone and is kind of starting to become the player everyone thought he would be. What's the biggest thing in his game that you noticed different from the years prior?
Confidence. He's giving himself permission to make big plays. He's not being deferential. And this was what happened with Adrian Kempe as well. Before Todd McClellan came to town, Adrian Kempe was a 12 to 14 goal scorer. And he became an alpha dog and started putting up 30 goals, put up 41 last year. Same things happened with Byfield. Now, again, this is a maturing player. This is and he's been hurt. Like, he had a broken ankle. He had 2 injured wrists last year. So he didn't play I think he played 50 games. But right now, when you play with Kopitar and Kempe, you better be productive, right? There's no excuse not to be productive. With a guy in Kopitar who's shown no regression in 36, and I already talked about Kempe. He's playing with the right players. But he's just way more confident. The one play he made, I believe, was in the Anaheim game where he threw this backhand pass, cross ice pass to Kopitar, and Kopitar finished, and you saw a look on Kopitar's face. He's just a much more confident player. He has all the skills. He's big. He's rangy. He chases down pucks. See, last season he was like the first guy in who would chase down a puck and get puck possession, but couldn't be productive. This year he's just much more productive, and I think a lot of it has to do because he now believes he can make these plays. And it's funny to hear that the guy was a second overall pick that lacked in confidence, but he certainly did in his first 2 seasons. I think that's the biggest change. Nothing that he's done stylistically or changed the flex on a stick or anything like that. It's just a much more confident player that's coming to the ice every night.
DV, I'm going to bring in the third member of our panel in right now, just for John Filkowski right here.
Hey, John.
And I'm going to ask you this question because I watched them about a month ago in Arizona. They went down 4-1.
Yep.
It was they let up the first goal of the game within the first minute, and it looked like Arizona was coming. But then you can never count the Kings out of a game. Like, defensively and offensively, they just look like they're always going to be coming at you.
Yeah, because they were all 4 lines. If you shut down Kopitar and Kempe in one game, then Danault Moore has, I think, 11 goals. He's on track for a 38-goal season. So Fiala can hurt you. Or their fourth line with Lazat in there. Their fourth line before Lazat got hurt was very, very effective. They gave up nothing when they put their bottom 6 out there, and a lot of teams do. It's the top-heavy teams like Edmonton and Toronto. When they put their bottom 6 guys out there, they lose games. Like, they lose momentum. Not with this team. They can roll 4 lines. Carl Grundstrom on probably 2/3 of the teams is probably a top 6 player on this team. He's been a 4th line player, right? He's been great for this team. So it's a situation where when they roll 4 lines, and a lot of teams like in Arizona can't match up. Yeah, maybe the first line with Clinton Keller and Nick Schmaltz, who always kills the Kings. Maybe they can compete. When you get down to the situation where you're rolling these lines and they're all productive, it's a very hard team to beat right now.
Now, before we kind of transition to your thoughts on the New York teams, the Kings are in 3rd place. They got an 8-point cushion on the next place team in the Pacific, which is the Flames. Would you say that they likely won't finish any lower than 3 in that division? Based on
they haven't.
Seattle is playing.
Yeah, and they haven't played a lot of games. I think they played 6 games in 21 days. And Todd said that, okay, yeah, we're going to pay for this later on. But they've played 1 game in a week. They played tonight, Wednesday, against the Caps. They haven't played since last Saturday, and then they don't play till Sunday against the Avalanche. So they're, believe it or not, and you never hear this from a coach, but I got this from Todd this morning, like, they're practicing too much. When have you ever heard a coach say, oh, we're practicing too much? Like, and the reason the concern is not to put in systems, or they do work on stuff. And the thing about this team, where you see they're connected to the coach, they try stuff in practice, and you see it that night in the game or the next day in the game. So the power play, the penalty kill, whatever they want to instill in this team, they are listening. So they're a coachable team. So that's part of the issue, but just not playing enough. And the issue is rhythm. Like, it's like any other sport. Like, you got to play, and they'll get to a point where they are playing every other day, like most NHL teams. The big concern is that they're playing so well, but they're not playing enough, so they lose the rhythm. So I'm really interested to see it against Washington, which is not a great offensive thing, how they play the first 10 minutes. Are they still connected? Because when they play very well and they roll 4 lines and they have the 3 pairs rolling, they're a very, very good team. But the fact that they haven't played a lot, I think that's the biggest concern, which sounds crazy right now for a hockey team, that they're not playing enough games. But that's the situation right now. But I expect them not to be struggling for the 3 seed. I think it's them in Vegas. I think I'm going to see regression from Vancouver because their shooting percentage is really, really good. I don't think the depth is there that it is in Vegas and LA. So I think Vegas and LA will go 1-2 for the division, for the Pacific Division, when we get down to the final weeks of the season.
Yeah, Dennis, I have one question to ask about before we transition. I've taken a look at Pierre-Luc Dubois and just watching some of his games and seeing his numbers. It looks like he's kind of on pace for lower numbers. I apologize if this was answered before, but what are you seeing in his assimilation to the team and how he's fitting in and everything?
Well, we're trying to figure out a spot for him, to be honest with you. They first tried him with Fiala because 2 creative players, but the issue with playing him with Fiala is both Dubois and Fiala need the puck. And so when you have 2 guys on the same line that need the puck, it's probably not going to work. And it hasn't worked. So they moved Fiala alongside Danault and Moore, which I love because the IQ on both Moore and Danault is off the chart. They're defensive-minded players. They're more responsible defensively. So when Kevin takes that risk, and he's a very risky player at times, he has more support. I think the biggest thing with Dubois, he's still trying to figure it out. I think it's probably about 85, 90% figured out. If they had an Arvidsson in there, maybe that would help him a little bit more because Arvidsson's a playmaker. But again, if he's your 4th best center from a productivity standpoint, you got a really good friggin' team. And so so here's the thing. Yeah. He gets cover because of the great play of Kopitar and Danault and absolutely Lizotte when he's healthy as well. So he doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't need to come in and be a 45 guy. He doesn't need it. Now he's getting paid. He's getting paid $8 million, but he can come in and be a 30-30 guy. And if you get 30-30 guy, and let's say he's your 3C, wow, you got a team that's going to contend for sure. So, yeah, it's not been – so I get some people criticize Dubois because they look at the length of the contract, they look at the AAV, and the numbers don't equate to what the production should be for that type of contract. But the Kings don't look at it that way. They just look at we've got the 4 best centers possibly in the league, maybe in the West, and that's what they're banking on right now. So he can buy time to get assimilated. And I think he's going to play better in the second half than he does in the first half. But you're right that when people look at it, the production is underwhelming so far.
Now, Dennis, as you know, my latest piece is out for us today about the Islanders and some players they could add. A lot of Islander fans are calling for them to fire Lane Lambert. In your opinion, what do you think Lou is more likely to do first? Make a move for a guy like Zadorov, who a couple of insiders have mentioned the Islanders kicking around, or firing Lane Lambert? Which route do you think Lou would go first?
Well, I think there's a couple of games they won on the road that had they not won, I think Lane Lambert would have been gone. So I think the desperation move, like in Edmonton, like in other places, is to fire the coach because it's the easiest move to make. Yeah. Look, you look at that game last night, and you got to say some of that's coaching, right? You shouldn't be blowing a 4-2 lead in the third period. I know it's on the road. I know the Devils are bouncing back, and the Devils are I'll say this: the Devils are way better. They need Nico and Jack. They got to do with either guy. They need both guys. They don't get great goaltending, but when you look at that team, and you look, should they have lost that game? No. Is it how long is his leash? I'd say medium-sized leash because look, let's be real here. They have Tampa's right now the 8th seed. They have 2 games in hand on Tampa and they're 3 points out. It's not time. It's not time. And then you look at the teams that are outside looking in right now. The Caps, I think they'll fade. The Devils, they'll be back in. Buffalo, Tage Thompson not there. I don't think so. Then the goaltending's not there. And Pittsburgh's probably the biggest threat. Is it time yet? No, I don't think the team's tuned him out, right? I just don't think it's a very good team. That's the problem. I think that where they sit in the standings is probably what they are. They're not an overly talented team. They're not quick to the puck. They're an older team. I could tell you that there's 8 guys on the roster who are 30 years in age and older. And Pia Engvall's a top 6 player on your team. You're an average team. Yeah. And so that's it. Do I think it's time for Lane Lambert? No. If they go out there and lose like 3 and go next road trip and they get blown out 3 games and it looks like they're not trying, fine. They lost the game and they should have won last night, but I still think they're trying. So it's not time yet. But look, if they don't make the playoffs, then I don't think the coach is going to be there. I don't think the GM is going to be there. I don't think the time is now because they're not that far. They're not Columbus, right? They're not that far away. I just don't like the offense. When I watch this team, are they capable of making, like, I'll give an example with Edmonton. I think anybody on this panel here would agree with me that they're capable of making an 8 1-1 run based on their offense.
David is hot.
Are the Islanders capable of making an 8 1-1 run? I don't think so. They didn't score enough goals. They'd have to get 7 shutouts from Sorokin and 1 from Varley to get those 8 wins. That's how I look at this team right now. So I don't think it's time because they're not that far adrift from the playoffs. But again, ask me again in 20 games. And it's not the results, it's how they're playing. Are they competitive? Are they in games? And there's some pros on this team. Like, I like the character of a lot of these guys on the team. I just don't think there's enough quality there to say, is this the top 8 when you have teams like, Florida bouncing back? And if Tampa's your 8th seed, it's going to be really tough to get in. So not yet for Lane. I think there were some games on that trip. Had they not won, I think they would have been kind of playing a change. But in the moment, I don't think so.
DB, I've seen a lot of movies in my day where I've just watched it and went, this is a really good movie. And I can't believe how good it was. But something was missing.
Right.
I feel that way a little bit about the New York Rangers right now. I know this team is good, but it feels like there's something missing. So do you feel the same way? And if so, what do you think they're missing?
Well, they were 8-2-1 without Adam Fox. They were missing Adam Fox. I guess that's not a problem because Gus decided to take Adam Fox's spot. What are they missing? I don't think they're missing any. Like, the component of this team, I watch them play, and they're exciting. Panarin's in the conversation for the Hart without question, right? It's basically the same team that failed in the playoffs. So what could you add? Look, will the bottom 6 produce in the playoffs? Will Panarin produce in the playoffs? Will the big guys produce in the playoffs? They have all the components. I like the way they're playing. Kakko's a tough loss, right? Even though he's not productive, because you got to replace that player with somebody else. Luffren, Alexis is finally emerging. There's not too much I would add to this team. Like when they talked about Patrick Kane, I'm like, no way, that doesn't make any sense. I would say to you, well, first of all, what do you think they're missing? And when I look at the teams that they would potentially play, could they beat Toronto? Yep. Could they beat a Florida? Yeah. Like, there's not the team that I would thought would not knock them out is Carolina, but Carolina forgot how to play defense. So, and remember, the team that eliminated them last year was the Devils. The Devils don't look the same. So right now in the moment, I wouldn't touch this team. Sometimes you want to make an addition, whatever. Like, it depends how healthy they are. With Adam Fox, they're going to be even better. There's not much to not like about. It's like they're similar to LA. Like, what's not to like about this team right now? Now, granted, it's 20 games. Like, let's see if they go on a 5-game losing streak and there's a thread through that losing streak, then you can say, okay, this is the area they need to address. But right now, they're rolling. They play, they had that tough road schedule for a while. I don't know what to add to this team right now. I would know better when we get 2 weeks out from the trade deadline. For right now, don't touch what's not broken.
It's funny you say don't touch what's not broken, because that's something that I've said on my social media accounts over the last, I would say, week or so, especially in regards to Gustafsson and Fox and so on.
Right.
But, we mentioned the lack of depth at right wing. And they call up Johnny Brodzinski, who I know a lot of fans not going to satisfy, whatever the case may be, and then Adam Edstrom. Is there something that you can see there maybe in the not too distant future then? Because obviously they're going to need some sort of body that can kind of give them a little something, whether it's top 9, top 6.
Okay.
Would there be something that you could see maybe a little bit down the road there?
Well, John, you mentioned right wing. So you tell me how productive Blake Wheeler is going to be over the next 20 games.
That's the thing, and that's the problem, because he seems like he's kind of behind the play at times. And it seems like that's affected his line mates, especially Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, who've had their woes a little bit at 5-on-5. So that's why I bring this up, because I'm kind of concerned about that.
Well, when you're 6'5" and 225 and you're 37, you're going to be a little bit behind the player, right? It's not going to be you're not going to be skating with Connor McDavid. I want to see what that player does over the next 20 games, right? He's got 2, 4, 6, and 20 games, right? That's if you're going to play top line minutes, top 6 on this team. Like, because, the thing was, Wheeler was going to be a middle 6 guy, third line guy. Now he's moving up the line because Kakko's hurt, right? So could that be a area of concentration for the GM come the trade deadline? Yeah, it could be. But I think they have enough there, and they don't have cap space. So what are you going to do here? What player would you bring in, and who's going to be available? So right now, yes, could that be an area of opportunity 5-on-5? Yeah. And I think what happens with the Rangers when if they lose in the playoffs, how do they get beat? They'll lose on puck possession. They'll get outchanced, and their depth won't come through. So would that be an area to address? Sure, it would be. But I would think that now Blake Wheeler's got to show up, right? And if he doesn't over the next 20 games, then you got to say, okay, we need one more guy on the right side. So that's a good call by you. That would be the biggest area of opportunity. But again, when you get the other guys putting up numbers like they are, it's less of a concern right now because this team is not going to give up much. And look, I know that people said, oh, Lavi's a retread. And he just wants to coach every single team in the Metro Division. The man's a damn good coach. Whatever's going on, they're responding to this guy. There's more structure on this team. And I know people love Gallant. They thought he was a really good coach, and he's got screwed over in a couple of places like Florida and Vegas. But you could see the difference in this team, right?
Oh, yeah.
Without question. There's way more structure on this team. They're much more defensively responsible because he makes them be more defensively responsible. It's as simple as that. So Lavi's did a great job. So I don't think there's that yawning need for more production because I don't think this team, frankly, is going to give up that much.
DB, you saw Jonathan Quick play for a long time in LA. The last couple of years, his numbers aren't where they usually were when he was kind of in his heyday. Are you surprised to see how he's seemingly found a fountain of youth so far early on in the Rangers? Because he's looked great so far in all the games he's played.
And yes and no, because I think stylistically he's not playing any different. But there were pucks that were getting through him that were kind of low and mid-range chances that were getting right through him last year. That was what was happening. So I don't think there was any injury. His style hasn't changed, and that was the one rap on him. When you talk to guys like Mike McKenna, who's on with me on NHL Radio, talks about it, saying he needs to change his style. And I know John, and he's a stubborn guy, and he won 2 cups, and he got 60 shots in that style. It's too late for him to change, right? So the style's not going to change. The pucks that were getting through him last season aren't getting through him this season. It's as simple as that. Now, do I think these numbers, the off-the-chart numbers, are going to continue? No. I think he'll regress to the mean. But again, he's got a damn good team in front of him. Like, if he gives up a bad goal 5 minutes in the game, he's not going to worry, oh, that's my chance to win the game. Like, it's a function of the structure in front of him. Like, there aren't that many high-level chances. So am I surprised? I am, because I thought he was done. And then he went to Vegas, and look, he raised the cup. I was on the ice when he raised the cup. It was kind of awkward for him. I think the one thing saving grace was that Alex Martinez, who's his pal, handed it to him. So if it was Mark Stone or somebody else he had no connection to, that's fine. So yeah, I'm surprised at the numbers. I'm not surprised that his competitive nature, and he wanted to be there too. I think that matters. He grew up a Mike Richter fan. He's comfortable there, right? And that's so that he was set up to win, right? And let's say he started poorly. Let's say then you would have played Sorokin. You would have played Igor more. Shesterkin would have played more. So he was covered there too. He was set up to win. He went home. He's playing behind 8, an all-world goalie. He's playing with a really good team. So I'm not surprised that he's succeeding to the extent of the numbers. Yeah, that's kind of a shock to me based on what I saw last season in LA and in Vegas.
I agree there. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been a massive surprise. And, of course, you got Benoit Allaire, who is possibly the best goalie coach in the league. If time permits today, one of the things we're going to do is second-guess some of our preseason hot takes. Are there any preseason takes you have that you look over at yourself and go, how did I get that one wrong?
I want to go to the fourth period. Give me a second. I'll go to fourthperiod.com. I'll look at my preseason picks. My cup pick is because I'm not like my co-host Ryan Payton on Hot Stove. He had Edmonton and Toronto in the Cup final, so that doesn't it's not looking so good. So let me go back. I think that let's see. I had Rasmus Dahlin for the Norris probably isn't going to happen. Other than that, Don Granato's probably not winning the Jack Adams, but nothing that would go on. Cold takes exposed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
I have nothing. I have Jeff Ottinger for the Vesna. It's probably going to either be him or Demko.
He was mine too, so I can't really.
Yeah. But nothing really egregious that I embarrassed with you. And I had the Cup final as Colorado over Dallas. I mean Carolina over Dallas. So, but nothing. How about you guys?
Well, we all kind of said that the Bruins were going to take a step back and kind of struggle a decent amount, and that's certainly hasn't happened. So definitely got that one wrong.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I had the Bruins, I think, second in the division to Toronto. But I was going on air saying, oh, I don't even know if they're going to make the – it's a situation where Jim Montgomery might win the Jack Adams twice in a row, one for that season last season, which was incredible, and then for this season, up until a couple games ago, and they've hit a little bit of a rut. They were ahead of the pace of last year, right? So the fact that you subtract Bergeron and Krejci and you're better, that's a massive – and I watched them, and they control the game against the Kings. Again, this team blocks shots. They have great goaltending. They respond to their coaching. They're so well connected. They're quick to the puck. So it's no surprise that they're doing very, very well. But I agree. I thought they would regress to a point where they were probably a 100-point team in a wild card. But at this point, you got to slot them in the top 3 in the Atlantic.
Although, follow-up question on that one. If you had the Bruins, Game 7, once again, both goalies are healthy, who do you go with?
I like the kid from Alaska. I love Swayman. I would go with Swayman. I really would. Look, if they went to a 7 and it's Allmark and they lost 3-2, I wouldn't criticize them because, the big picture is like, what do you do there, though? Like, you can't keep running these guys like 40 games each. Like, you got to make a decision on one of these guys, right? And I think Swayman's a younger player. They love Allmark in the room, though. He's such a fiery, competitive guy. I talked to guys who play with him in Buffalo as well. So they really love him, and it's a difficult choice. But I would pick Swayman, but that's a really hard choice to make. And it's also based on the fact that, wasn't it Allmark in Game 7 against the Panthers? So I might want to change my tune for another Game 7 going forward this season.
Now, DB, real quick, do you think a team takes a chance on Corey Perry now that he's going to be? No.
It's unfortunate what happened, and the social media situation really kind of sued him, like with respect to the rumors that were out there that were disgusting. I don't see it. I really don't see it. You're talking about a 38-year-old forward who got in trouble for misbehaving. Like who wants to put that in the middle of the room? You got to be a really desperate team to do that. I don't see the level of desperation for any team right now, given the circumstances around Corey Perry.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is a shame because he was producing for his age at a decent clip for Chicago, so he still had some game left. But
here's the problem, though: you brought him in for character.
Yeah,
that's what you brought him in. You wanted to surround Connor Bedard with character players, and then this guy goes off and does this, whatever it was. That's a really bad look. And of all the organizations for it to happen to, coming off what happened to Kobe, it couldn't happen there. So now people are saying, well, they should have jumped on this earlier. It shouldn't have been 12 hours before they responded. I don't know about that, but that's the tough part, Anth, is that was a character guy that you added, and he got fired for character. That's just it was really, really bad judgment by a player who definitely should have known better. And I'm sure the details eventually will come up at some point in time, but I can't see knowing the league the way I do. You'd have to be super desperate to take a chance on this now, just because of the reaction and how well received he would be in the room based on what he may or may have not have done.
Well, thanks for joining us, DB. Sure, I'll be talking to you very soon. Appreciate you coming on here and talking with us for a little bit.
Oh, always great being in Big Apple hockey. Anytime you want me, I'm happy to come on.
Thanks a lot.
Well,
thank you, boys.
We get you on NHL Radio.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of great hockey content and an entertaining, interactive podcast. So check us out and our library of videos.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.